freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom.
Slavery began in 1619 when the first 20 slaves arrived in Jamestown. Since that time, we as a nation have come far, but present circumstances demand answers. Have we come far enough? How important are the words, "I felt threatened"? Have recent events awakened us to the fact that we need more significant change? And was the Constitution corrupted at its inception? In the 1990s, gun rights advocates, including the National Rifle Association, condemned the federal authorities' assault on the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. These law-abiding citizens, they said, had a Second Amendment right to own guns for their self-defense. Sounds logical, right? But where are these advocates when police shoot people of color who are legally carrying firearms and presenting no threat to the officers involved? Philando Castile was a black man in Minnesota who was pulled over by the police. He showed the officer his identification and, using the NRA guidelines, alerted the officer that he had a licensed weapon with him. "I felt threatened," the officer said, and shot him. The NRA went virtually silent. The sharp racial distinctions in Americans' treatment of gun ownership goes back to the founding of the Republic. The language of the Second Amendment was crafted to ensure slave owners could quickly crush any resistance from those they had enslaved. In other words, the right to bear arms, presumably guaranteed to all citizens, was repeatedly denied to people of color, with brutal consequences. The Second Amendment also talks about a well-regulated militia. In the mid-18th century, during the Revolutionary era, what did the state militias do? To put it bluntly, the state militias, especially in the South, were regulated to put down slave revolts. When slaves rebelled against harsh conditions in 1738 in Stono, South Carolina, the state responded with a law saying that if you found a slave trying to get to Spanish Florida, you had the right to scalp and kill them. When Americans revolted against the Crown of Great Britain, they needed to raise a continental army. The policy in 1775 was that no black men could serve in the army. A series of British victories, however, proved that state militias could not fend off the professional British soldiers. Since there were not enough white men volunteering to fight, a few states promised freedom to those blacks that were willing to join the army, but not many. The British countered with an offer of their own: fight for us and gain your freedom once we win the war. A mass exodus of slaves joined the British Army for that reason. This sent a panic through the colonists. After more states opened up to recruit black men, a wave of slaves joined the Continental Army. They served longer terms, they were paid less, they had a lower AWOL rate than white soldiers. And what did they get? They got a narrative that the Revolutionary War was fought by white men alone. And at the end of the war, the South agreed to join the Union only if their state militias were used for their own purposes, to suppress slave revolts. But the Southern states also used the militia if they didn't like the results of an election. The Colfax Massacre in 1873 came about when white Louisianans stormed a courthouse. An all-black militia was formed to defend a legal election against white vigilantes. They were massacred while supporting democracy. Sound familiar? While much has changed over the years, the reactions of whites to people of color bearing arms have not. This must change.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord.